It is, by my clock, 3 minutes after 7 on the 25th of September. This is the Jamaica Selectboard meeting. The first order of business is to find out if there's any late additions to the agenda. And as it happens, there are at least two that I know about. One is Veda would like to give us the latest update on the town plan.
Yes.
Just a couple minutes to tell us where we are.
Yes.
And then where we're moving forward. And then about the library. So, first thing we need to do in the usual order of business after doing, are there any other agenda additions that I need to be aware of? Hearing none, moving on. This is going to be a busy night, so we're going to try to stay quick. Minutes of September 11th Select Board meeting have been circulated to everybody electronically. Are there any corrections, deletions, or additions to those minutes that were circulated?
Move to accept.
I'll second.
Is there discussion? Yes. Under number 12, it's been a long time since I've actually had a correction. On number 12, the last sentence, if we could say, Paul pointed out that the committee doesn't have to be restricted to 3 people, if anyone wants to be interested, as opposed to the 3 people. Last sentence, number 12.
2.
See, you thought that I wasn't paying attention.
Nobody's.
I have a first, motion, a second, and discussion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, they are approved as amended.
Don't we vote?
Did
I
we
think
vote?
we vote.
I'm trying to make it go fast. I might skip a few
Yeah, there
points.
you are.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There we are. Now we're approved as amended. Okay. We have a number of speakers tonight. I want to make sure people have time to do what they plan on doing. But approve the timesheets to town offices, Lister's Highway and Transfer Station, and sign the select board orders. Those things are done at the end of the session, so it saves you guys from sitting here watching us go through all that stuff. First order of business, we have Keith Hazard is our road foreman, and he has 2 quick items he would like to throw at us. Mr. Keith.
Okay, first one is met with a lady named Emily Davis about the hydrologically connected road segments that is we're required to fix up through Act 64. Rode around with her, they were in pretty good shape. She liked what she saw so far. There was a couple items, there was a couple of places that we're starting work on because we have to be getting into compliance June 1st. We're pretty close. Just the update that we're pretty close. We went through the most of the roads in town that were connected, and other than maybe a couple of miles of it, we're in pretty good shape. So no sweat.
Is this in connection with that state mandate to do things in the water? What is that
Yeah.
called? Act 64?
There's just a couple of steep roads that we have to stone line some ditches. We have to get rid of a couple of berms, and that's really about it. Everything else is, a lot of it was fixed during Irene, thanks to Irene. And a lot of it we've just been plugging away at over the past couple of summers, so we're a little bit ahead of it. So that's going pretty good, if anyone's wondering.
Please thank the crew for being on top of this.
What about the West Jamaica Road where that new slide is? Is that in there?
I met with the guy before, Mark Pickman, John Alexander, 3 years ago.
Been a while.
It's out of our right of way.
Right.
So, and it's a slide,
Right.
and FEMA doesn't give money for that. And his estimate on fixing it, like permanently, was $200,000. My idea was maybe just set aside $1,000 and see if someone will hydroseed it with something besides grass. Something that'll root it, because it's already getting better. You know, just get something to root there, trees and stuff. And I think it'll, like the constant ooze that you get in the spring and during rains, it will stop eventually. Because just above there in that corner, you can't see it now because it's all covered with Christmas trees, but that was the same thing. You got rain, it busted loose, and it was 10 feet deep across the road. And eventually some stuff got growing on it and it stopped. I think that's the cheap fix at this point.
Are you allowed to put a culvert under the road there?
There's two.
There are two.
Yeah, there's one this side, at this end of the slide, and there's one at the far end of the slide. But that is where the clay is constantly oozing. So it's filled that one full, so we tipped the ditch all the way back to the culvert. It's not so much that there's running water, it's just whatever's trapped in the clay, and it just constantly makes it move. Because there is a retaining wall in there. It's probably 12 feet tall, but it's covered it.
And the other piece of that is we talked with the owner of the land about taking down some of the trees on the lip.
Right.
And we talked to her, and we got some agreement in that, but it never went forward. And it's all private property, so she can really do what she wants. But the biggest thing was those trees were coming down, and like I said, we built culverts and we built a 12-foot wall. All we could do, given what people would let us do.
Yeah, I mean, if you could get with that, if we could get with that person again and get up on that hill and cut all the trees and get the weight off the top of the bank, that would probably help a lot too.
But that's hers, and she has the right.
Right, and it's, I drove up the road to her house thinking that it was like, because it looks like you're looking up through the trees and you can see their yard, but it's not, it's fairly remote. You'd have to hire someone with a skidder or something to go out through their woods, cut the trees, pull them back up. I don't know if they'd be into that or not, but.
Thank you.
The other topic is, I think we have to start the discussion on replacing the 06 truck. It's good if we can get them replaced every 10 years or so. Our last truck, we waited 12 years. And we had it traded for $35,000. And we were purchasing from Delivery. And the agreement was that we could keep our truck till our new truck was ready. And in the meantime, the body broke in half. So our $35,000 trade went to, what was it, $6,000? So I think it's not so much that the trucks are worn out, it's the equipment on the trucks. They get really rusty and they wear out, and that's kind of what sells the truck when you trade it in. I think trucks are kind of a dime a dozen, but when you have all that equipment on it and someone can buy it for $40,000 to $50,000, it makes it pretty appealing. That's why they like to take town trades, like a landscaper or whatever would buy it. But the truck itself is in pretty good shape, but the equipment's starting to get pretty rusty, and we do oil undercoat a couple times a year. My thought is to start getting some prices so that if we do buy, we buy by January 1st, so we get the truck by March, because it takes about 6 months to get the truck equipped. So this coming fall, we'd have the truck for the winter. Because it takes a while. The last truck we got it in October, we never got it back from being equipped until almost April. The winter was over. So it's kind of important how you plan it, and if you can do it before July 1st, when everybody approves money for a new truck, and then there's the mad rush to go to like Fairfield or Tenco or Viking to get the trucks equipped, the line isn't as long. Because if you're like in a purchasing year for the state, you might be 50th in line to get the body and plow and everything put on your truck. So I guess that's what I'm asking, is to be able to find out, get some prices, get 3 bids on a truck, and kind of go from there.
Would that be for a new one or a used one?
New.
No, yeah.
So how soon do you want it?
long process.
Well, to start
use?
getting, what's that?
When would you like to have it to use?
Well,
Next winter?
like it before next winter, so
Right, okay.
if it was purchased around the first of the year, we'd have it probably by October,
Right.
probably.
Will
Yes.
this one last this winter?
Yeah,
Okay.
no, it works okay, it's just, I don't wanna, I just feel like you're better to get $30,000 or $40,000 against something that's $150,000 than 6. And it's a loss.
Yeah, stretching it last year did not work.
No,
Well,
So when you say 6, you meant for the last truck? You're not talking about this truck?
right, the last truck, we just waited a little bit too long and it was essentially worthless when he took it. In fact, he still has it. So,
I would encourage that movement.
Do we need to vote on
Let's
this?
just do it for the record. Let's accept the motion
Okay.
To what?
to allow him to proceed looking for 3 bids for a new truck.
I move that.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of having Keith do the research on this truck, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and it's unanimous, sir. Thank you very much. Oh, and thanks for this hydrology thing too, because I know that's on the horizon. It hasn't connected with all this yet, but it's coming.
there's some copies I made up.
Yeah, I have some extra copies for anybody needs it. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Next item is a recurring item. We found that for some reason or another, Lou apparently never really intended to resign. He intended to keep coming back every week. This is a new errors and omissions list that he's provided us. I think you guys all have seen this. Would you like to speak to that for a second?
Sure. This was an error that was discovered with a phone call from Sasasimo. Sasasimo realized they weren't being taxed enough. But no, they wanted to be upfront and above board. And they highlighted an error that was made, so we included it. It was a small piece of property that they purchased from, if you know the road to Sasasimo's pit, it's got a little house right over the bridge. And that house was owned by a gentleman, and he passed away. And I suspect that what happened was Sasasimo always wanted to just have everything on the other side of the bridge, waited till this gentleman passed away, and then bought the piece from the estate. And so this is that little piece. It's an acre, 1.67 acres.
This is not the first time somebody has come to you to up there.
Yes.
You guys must be a very welcoming outfit.
Well, people like to be honest and above board.
Most people do, strangely enough. So I would entertain a motion to this effect.
Also, by the way, we reduced their assessment by $6,000 or so, because when they bought the property, they didn't put it on the market, they just went to an appraiser, got the appraised value, and we used that appraised value in coming up with our assessed value.
So where the new figure come from?
A phone appraiser.
The new one as well?
Right.
167?
167 now, well, it was actually 168, we couldn't make our software hit 168 on the nose, so we ended up at 167.9.
Okay, good.
So move.
Do I have a second? I have 2 seconds. Second square.
Take your choice.
Yes. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is passed. Thank you, sir. Next order of business is review and sign the memorandum of understanding with the Newton Solid Waste Management District regarding the loan of recycling containers.
Right.
We've talked about that in the past. This is the MOU, which is pretty much what we've talked about.
Yes, and basically what it's saying is that we are going to be loaned these 3 containers which hold the recycling and that the district will still carry coverage on it, but if we mess it up, we end up paying some of the
Break
costs
it and
of
buy
that. Yeah, and that basically, if we have to get rid of it, it has to be under their jurisdiction of any of them, have to go and they'll use it for scrap. And we may be able to get some others, but that's off in the future. So it's a good deal. We're not really paying any money for it. It's just because we're members of the Wyndham Solid Waste. And we're using them already.
Sure,
So,
that was excellent. We just need to approve it, and then we have to have three select board members sign. So. the
so
motion
I
then-
move that we sign the memorandum of understanding with Wyndham Solid Waste for the 3 roll-off containers.
Do I have a second?
Recycling.
Have a second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes, and we will put this in the to be signed file for tonight.
Mhm.
The next item, let's see, here we got this. We have coming up shortly the VLCT annual business meeting for October 4th. They've asked us to appoint a voting member for their annual business meeting. The business meeting is October the 4th, Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. in Killington. So, what is your pleasure? Is anyone interested or planning on going to this anyway?
Well, I had sent you an email, I am going.
You are going to go up to this one in Killington, right? All right, so would you, as a select board, wish him to be the voting member?
Yes or no?
Would I wish me to be the?
Well, we,
Yeah,
asking
Do
for
you
the rest
want
of the
the
board.
job? in other
He's
words?
asking for you to do it.
Yeah,
Okay. I
we have a
move-
volunteer, that's always good.
I
I
abstain.
move that, roll with that. I move that we choose our distinguished member of the board here to Joel Bluming to be our representative at VLCT.
Excellent. Do we have a second?
I can't say for myself.
You're not gonna second it?
Well, I'm not sure, I thought it was somebody else. No? I'll second it.
Good.
Sure, I'll be the second. I'm flexible.
Do I have to recuse myself from voting?
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
No, you can't. Yeah, we have 3 of us. All in favor? Any further
Not
discussion?
there, though.
No, you don't have to there. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Only 2?
Aye.
Oh, 3. Okay, thank you, sir. Any opposed? No? I'll give you this package of stuff here,
Thank God.
and I will, after we get everything, then I'll go ahead and sign it for you. Okay? So you can look over what you're entitled to, what exactly is going to happen. All right, so VLCT member is Joel. The next order of business, we have been being asked by BDCC and CVEDs, is that how you pronounce it now? Sevens. I saw these little carrots, I thought maybe it's a long. To come and talk to us for a few minutes for several months. And I have been putting off because we've been full. We're still full, but I felt guilty. So we have a short time, but I'm going to give you a shot.
Thank you. So, thank you very much. You guys are very efficient, and I know all of our boards are so busy, so we appreciate the work that you're doing. Sometimes it's hard to actually kind of pick your head up and think about the bigger economy. And so that's really what we want to come and talk to the boards about, and make sure you know what tools are available and programs are available, both for the town and for your residents. So through our SEDS process, which is a 5-year comprehensive economic development strategy that was created in 2014, we have, that was a regional process done throughout all of Wyndham County, Wyndham region. We have a number of strategies looking to grow the economy in the region. And so we've brought you tonight, very briefly, and we're going around to all of our municipalities. We've brought you brief descriptions about a number of the programs that are available and that we're working on, and we're hoping for participation and feedback, pushback. That sucks, that's great. Why isn't it doing this? As I said, they're available for you and your residents. There are a number of workforce development programs that we're doing, both looking at kids, young professionals. We found that really the largest problem in Windham County is the size and quality of the workforce. We have some data that we brought around that as well that kind of demonstrates that for you. The thing we want to tell you about is you are not alone, although there is one little, as in most towns, there's one little outlier piece of data that we'd love to ask you about. You'll see on this second page information around the census, and we can also get you trend information if you're looking at that. But this is typical of what we see in most of the smaller towns in Windham County. We're seeing a real sharp decline in that 20-year age group, and an increase actually in our retirees. So that's pretty typical. As you can imagine, that real sharp decline in that 30 year, has impacts on our schools, has impacts for our employers, property owners, all sorts of things. And it's not a great indicator of our future, that population going down. The thing that is, I think, hopeful there are two things that are hopeful to think about with that. One is, that's a trend we see nationally in a lot of rural areas, and not everyone is as organized as Windham County is. So we do have these regional processes and regional programs that we're building, both trying to bring in and keep young folks. In particular in Jamaica, we have a Fast Track to Success program. This is something that's being done with all the high schools in Windham County, looking at matching our employers with our, is it sophomores and juniors right now? And helping kids just know what opportunities exist. I live in the valley, my kids go to Twin Valley, and we did a hiring inventory in Windham County 4 years ago, and just with our largest employers found that we had 3,500 jobs that were going to need to be filled in the coming 5 years, either through an employer wanting to grow, retirement, with our aging population, or just natural kind of attrition. And I thought to myself, and you guys may see it here as well, the people where I live, down in Deerfield Valley, they don't feel like there's a demand for employment. I mean, they're feeling a little bleak about the economy, that there maybe is no future for their kids. So part of our work is really helping to connect dots so that people have an opportunity to see kind of a little bit more of the picture around them and maybe feel some opportunity. So that's what we're doing here tonight. We also have coming up so we're almost done, but very briefly, as I said, that SEDS process, it's a 5-year plan, and it's federally prescribed how that plan gets created through the U.S. Department of Commerce, EDA. It's grassroots, it has to be regional, and it has to have a number of different sectors represented in it. So we're going to be doing that process again in the coming year, with a goal of having one completed for 2019. We're hoping we've got preliminary approval from the U.S. Department of Commerce to start, and we're hoping to kick off late fall. This year, we will also be doing this at the invitation of the federal government with Bennington County. So we'll do it in all kind of southern Vermont. In this area, I feel like that'll probably be more, that'll probably help. So I think you folks probably, you could tell us, we feel like up in this area, you tend to align a little bit more with the Manchester area. Does that make sense, or just kind of halfway in between?
We're halfway.
I think it's halfway.
Yeah. Well, that's really the question that I wanted to ask you about on the second piece of data. So as part of that SEDS process, what we'll do, what we did last time, is we'll go and we'll meet with civic groups and you folks, and we'll host big public meetings, and we'll do that regionally throughout Windham County and Bennington County. We'll try and help folks kind of wrestle with real data. So here's what we're seeing. Tell us about it. Ground truth, of course. Tell us, what you see, why you think this is. And so what we've been doing is we've been going out and updating folks and giving them information on our various programs, is starting to sample out some of this data. And the piece that we've found to be most fascinating for us and most compelling really in terms of acting regionally is this data around commuter, okay? So this is the residents in your town that work, how far do they travel to work? And so this, again, is somewhat typical of your surrounding towns. As you might expect, Brattleboro has a little bit less of a mean travel time. But, you know, where I'm from, Wilmington, Dover area, it's also about 30 minutes that people are traveling to work. The one that we wanted to ask you about, we were kind of looking at beforehand in terms of outliers, was this 45 to 59 minutes. And I'm just curious if you folks have a sense of where your people are working an hour from here.
In that time frame?
That seems like Rutland, Keene,
Yeah.
Bennington.
Rutland's,
Bennington's about
yeah, those are all pretty triangulated around that.
I commuted to Brattleboro for almost
Oh, sure.
30 years,
Yeah.
and that was about 40
Right,
minutes, so.
right. So that one's a little higher in the hour range, but we see, you know, some of the towns that are more right in the center of southern Vermont along the spine, you know, we do see higher travel times. So we think that's interesting data. We hope that folks will consider that when we're talking about, you know, your neighbors, other towns like you in southern Vermont. Typically, in terms of economics, they're struggling with similar things. You guys are not too bad, at least in your downtown, and you're selling broadband, but that's a big one for a lot of small towns. Housing, you know, water, sewer, those things are really big. And so what we're trying to do is, you know, we know how busy you guys are. And I'm almost done.
I have a question.
You're
Sure.
very welcome.
Sure.
How do you fit in with Wyndham Regional?
So Wyndham Regional does a lot of long-term, they do long-term land use planning, transportation, a lot of housing, health, that kind of thing. Our planning is really around the economy. So thinking about jobs, thinking about workforce, thinking about supports for entrepreneurs, thinking about funding of projects also. Wyndham Regional does a fair amount of that as well.
Yeah, it sounds very familiar,
Yeah.
that Wyndham Regional also is involved.
Yeah, it's kind of a deepening of, so their ability really focusing more on economic growth as opposed to community growth. So those things go hand in hand, right? We want both of those things to happen. So, or we like to think most people want both of those things to happen. So that's what we're doing here tonight. That's what we're doing around. We just want to come out and let you know this SEDS process is going to be happening. It will only be once it's done, we're going to work like the dickens to implement it. We've been doing that since 2014. So when it's happening, we really hope you'll participate because it's only going to be as good as the participation that we get and the feedback that we get from folks. So, Kristen, do you have something you want to?
Hi, I'm Kristen Miller. I'm the director of the internship program at BDCC for currently enrolled college students as well as recent graduates. But just to kind of dovetail off of what Laura said, I think it's really important because to recognize that the programs that we have on the front of the sheet and a lot of the programs that you've heard about came from our first sets. So these weren't just developed. These are really coming from the community and the region's long-term strategies. So we're really looking forward 5 years to what are the next strategies and what are the next programs that we need to implement to improve our region's economy.
And trying to add capacity for our small little towns. So if you don't come out and tell us, we don't need that, we need that,
Yeah.
we're not gonna develop that. We're gonna go,
I have to apologize, it dawned on me just 30 seconds ago when you did introduce yourself.
yeah.
That would be good if you would introduce yourself for the camera. I know who you are, but I'm not sure
Yes.
others do.
Laura Sibilia, I'm the director of, what am I?
Regional economic
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I knew it and I thought,
Yes.
thank you very much. This sort of stuff can really take a lot of energy and thinking.
And
And
we,
we have some unique problems, one of which we're going to address here shortly, the gentleman behind you.
okay, maybe we'll wait. But we're a resource,
Mhm.
and again, you know, we hope that you folks will help us disseminate and push out involvement in creating this
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for the information.
Yes, and if there's additional data you're looking for, don't hesitate to let us know.
Yeah, it's good to have. Thank you, thank you. Started on our next presentation already.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Making a connection.
You're welcome to say if you want.
She's getting married. This is
She's
her
getting
last-
married?
Yes.
No,
Wait, no.
Stay
This is
alive.
our last-
Oh, don't.
Thank you very much. Our next order of business is presentation by Beck and Terry. We have been talking about potential water projects for town for a long time. In fact, we have a report from 2000, the Jamaica Water Quality and Septic Study that was done back in 2000. And so what we're trying to do, Joel made a couple of points about the fact that technology has changed in the last 17 years, and we should perhaps take a look at what is current. And so we've asked a couple of agencies, 3 I believe, to give us an estimate of what it would cost, to give us an estimate of what we can do. And that, we have Mr. Beck with us this evening.
Yes, I'm Matthew Beck, and I have a Jamaica business, small business. I have just 4 of these. This is, Joel came and talked to me at my office regarding the town's, potential stagnancy because of the inability to increase the people's use of their individual wells. And that falls, that goes hand in hand with the septic systems, because we have a small village here with small lots, and each lot has their own well, and each lot has their own septic system. So it's hard to meet the required isolation distances to increase the capacities of these individual lots. And so Joel came to us talking about possibly getting a village water system. And there was a lot of questions, you know, we discussed it briefly, and I sat with my staff engineer, Jessica Rizzio, and we came up with a bunch of questions that would need to be answered to put together the feasibility of a water system. You know, Joel has alluded to that some people aren't necessarily interested in doing this, but the prospect of future development in the village is certainly limited by its ability to produce the water and to treat the wastewater. So we felt that because of I ran out of words. Because some people might want to do it and some people might want to do it, we thought it'd be important to survey the town, put a small questionnaire together with some very basic questions, not too many questions, because if you have too many questions, it goes in the garbage can. To get an idea of where the village people, and it maybe you have to, you know, to the village people to see if what their interests are and who's for it and who's against it. We have to answer questions as to where the service area is going to be. You know, it builds very quickly. You know, in this little village, there's a lot of structures, a lot of properties. And we talked about, you know, there's a public water. This would be if there was less than 15 hookups to this system, which doesn't sound like it would be very helpful to meet the goal of developing a future development in town. We wouldn't have to get a public water supply. And so obviously the survey would be very crucial in determining how many people are interested in being on a municipal system. Because if another question we would have to answer is, if we did come up with a system, would the people in the service area be forced to hook up? Because not only do we have to meet the water demand requirements, we gotta have a well big enough to supply the water. We have to be able to physically support that utility. And the state won't give a permit to construct and a permit to operate until the town proves that they have the physical capacity to maintain the system. It'll need, if it's more than 15, if it's 15 structures or more that hook up to it, then it has to be a public community water supply. And that means a lot of different things. It means you need to have a licensed water treatment operator, water system operator. You'll have to end up with finding a location of the well, and the town will have to control the land around that well, because no development will be allowed for a specific number of feet, a radius. We'll have to have a storage tank to either hold the raw water before it's treated, and then we have to distribute it. And in small rural communities, the distribution network becomes expensive. So we feel that in order to do a study that would answer the questions on these sheets, we would estimate that to be a $10,000 cost for us. And we would end up trying to answer these questions, trying to identify where the town owns property and if that's a suitable place for a well. And then we have to find, again, the possible easements for putting water lines in the ground. A storage tank and a treatment building would go together, obviously. And then it would go to the distribution network, and then you'd have to maintain that distribution network. And I don't know if it was last year or the year before. No, it wasn't the year before. But we had a really cold winter without any snow, and water systems across the state were freezing up and leaking water for weeks at a time until they could get their water mains fixed. So that's... I guess that's my presentation, unless there's any questions.
I have a good question. Would a fire district, the construction or the innovating, we understand there's a fire district from way back when. Would that make a difference, do you think?
No, the fire district is essentially the same thing, what it says is, the fire district has a border, our service area. That would create the service area. And the fire district has the ability to charge the customers for their water use. And, there's lots of different fees that the various fire districts around the state do. You have to have an assessment fee, so when you're applying for a project, you got to kind of pay to reserve that much water so that the facility knows how much water it has and how much it can give to you and give to the next guy. And then you have to pay for the water. So you don't pay once, then you pay every month. And there might be some assessments for infrastructure and what have you. So that's all part of the same thing. It's all the same thing.
Gotcha, okay. Because I heard that thrown around a couple of directions, and I didn't know very much about it. Thank you.
What do you know about financing of this system that we would be getting in terms of state? Would they be loans? Would they be grants?
We would research that. We would research what available funds. And it seems like I would go to SEVEDS.
There you are.
to look for some money. But that would be part of our feasibility study. We'd be
That would be
looking
the
for grants,
$10,000.
there's a rotational, there is a rotating loan for water supplies in the state. I'm not sure if that just applies to schools. It might apply to all municipal, town water systems, I'm not sure. But that would be part of that, our feasibility study. We would be investigating those sources for you.
Is there any way that, it looks like part of this feasibility study is to survey the town residents and businesses. Is that something that the town could do? Or, without having to commit to a 10,000 or another dollar amount of a study? Or, because personally, I've had like 3 different people pushing back on this because they don't know anything about it, but I was very glad to hear that clause in there about surveying the town. I didn't hear that in the last one, the last presentation we had.
Well, that's because Jessica in my office, she's very smart.
We've actually found that to be the case over the years working with her.
They gave a very good presentation, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, one of the things that we do know, and I happen to be an outlander, is that there are a lot of people who are not really happy about paying taxes for something that's happening in a very small area, when we all have our own wells. I'm not saying that's Judy Flower's decision, I'm just reporting what I know.
Yeah, that is, that's human nature, right? If it ain't broke, don't fix it, but it ain't broke for them.
Right.
But for the big picture, it might be very squeezed for the development, and we gotta work somehow it's the same argument we have with schools though too, right? I sent my kids through school and, I paid my taxes and now my kids are all out and I'm still paying taxes for school.
Right.
So it's the same thing, maybe a little bit different, but it's very similar. And sometimes in order to move forward, you have to be willing to pay for it.
Well, this is one of the things that I think makes it, I don't want to say it for the same purpose, but it seems to me that you guys are marching in the same direction in that if we don't have water, you're going to have a hard sell. And if we can't sell it on your side, we're certainly not going to sell people to increase their taxes to do something. So these nebulous, let's fix this before it happens, plans are tricky. Especially, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And, back to what I was talking about before, a lot of your neighbors have this same problem. So in Wyndham Regional, when we did our first sets, there are projects, Kristen's we've handed out cards to you. This would be a project, either the feasibility study or once designed, the whole system itself would be a project. Wyndham Regional identified this as one of the largest barriers to growth in Wyndham County. Water is going to be king. And so if your town doesn't have water, the ability, right now we're seeing the highest growth in value-added food products. You need water. And so places that, my town that I live in, we've got a wonderful study plan, the whole thing's set to go. We took out money to build out the great plan. We cannot get it to go in front of the taxpayers for bonding. And to me, I know it is a huge barrier for our town.
Right.
And our property values.
Oh, sure. Okay, so we referred to the Jamaica Village Water Quality and Septic Study that was done in 2000.
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, I read that today. It was boring.
It was. How far did you get?
I read the whole thing.
Oh.
There is nothing in this report that really talks about potable water.
Right,
This
it's
is
all
about
septic.
septic.
That's exactly right.
And this was done in 2000, and then it was forgotten. And this document, if you read it, is almost an emergency. because almost every septic system in this town is gonna fail within the next 10 years probably, because most of the septic systems, according to this, last about 20 years. And these septic systems are 30, 40, 50, 60 years old. And a lot of them are in non-compliance. Most of them are inadequate leach fields, or worse than that, dry wells, which are probably not on sand.
How do you know that? Who says?
I've read this report.
Yeah.
Read it.
Who says that
Read the
they're
report.
inadequate? That's illegal.
This report says they're inadequate.
Yeah.
This says they're illegal, yeah.
Well,
No, it says they're
non-compliant
inadequate.
I'm the health officer, that's why I'm asking.
Oh, well, non-compliant has a couple, well, if it's pre-existing,
Right.
it doesn't need to comply with today's current regulations.
Unless it's commercial,
Well, no, even if it's commercial, if it's pre-existing, it doesn't have to, but if it wants to expand, it has to meet the current technical standard,
Right.
if it wants to expand.
even non-commercial, if you add a bedroom.
That's right. If you want to expand, you have to meet current state standards. If you're just replacing something that's failed, like with the D&K grocery store there, or general store, that system failed a couple of years ago. We were able to rebuild it right in place, but it had about 4 wells that were within the isolation shield of that septic system. So they would never be able to increase the capacity of that store, but they were allowed to fix the system that had failed.
That's on an individual case by case.
Right, yeah.
That's right. If you can make the system, if you can make the situation better, you can get a variance to fix your septic system. So it was better to have the septic in the ground than running on the sidewalk. And it was not getting any closer to any of the wells, so we were able to get a permit to fix that. Not to make it bigger, not to increase the business of the store, but they would allow you to go in and fix it most likely. This little village is sitting on a whole bunch of gravel. River gravel, obviously, we saw what the river does in Irene. And that's easy to get rid of septic in gravel. It doesn't treat the septic very well, and that's the problem with having all the individual wells in close proximity. I think because it does readily accept effluent, I think the septic systems, say a residential septic system, I think has a good chance of lasting way longer than 20 years.
Well, they are all mostly way
yeah.
older.
You know, when you had, the problem with the D&K was, they took out the grease trap for some reason. And their food producer and the grease killed their septic system. If they had that grease trap on it, the septic system probably would not have failed. Because the gravel is so clean.
But back to my point was that this doesn't talk about potable water.
Right.
And there are other issues about potable water besides septic. There's chemistry and biology. And according to this, and I'm no expert, according to this, it's already a necessity. They claim this report claims that it's a necessity to do septic. And we've talked about perhaps doing water to obviate the need for doing septic, because a total town septic system would be extremely expensive.
Yeah, well, and the water system, if you did have a public water system for the village, say, and we just said all the houses in the village, we still have water lines that we have to get the water. We'll have to have a distribution network in the ground, and we'll still have setbacks where we can put our septic systems from those water lines. It's not nearly as big as the setbacks that you need for a well. But, so it would, that's where easements come in, because we might find it's more advantageous to cross somebody's land with the water line to free up larger areas where you could put better septic systems in. But we still will have to work, our isolation distances will still be there, but they'll be smaller.
Right. And the other factor is that everything, as we said a few minutes ago, is interrelated. And there was one report at one of these meetings that talked about not being able to find volunteers for the fire department. There was one discussion about the fact that the public school only has 68 students. And these things, in my opinion, are all interrelated. If a town isn't growing, it's a very delicate balance for it to be neutral. So if it's not growing, it's probably shrinking. Just my guess. So if we're concerned about this town living into the next century, I think that we have to face the fact that we have to pay for things and do things. Now, I have a question for you, because this report mentioned that there are 114 residences and buildings in the village that are occupied or...
That was in 2000?
Yeah.
We did take a quick look at that, counting the buildings, you know, with, since 2000, now we have all the air photos and the computers have gone gangbusters, and you have GIS and all this other stuff. So we did get online and count the number of structures kind of in the village. You know, we didn't draw a circle. We just said, okay, if we went to the D&K, was it a landscape place now, or home maintenance, up to essentially like the fire department or so. And there was over 100, as I recall, there was over 100 or close to 100. And that's where it becomes critical. Oftentimes, the fire districts have rules that say, well, you know, if anything goes wrong, you can use your well as long as it's functional, and as soon as it isn't functional, you have to sign up with us. But that means the beginning years might be a very long, might have an awful lot of expenses, because the number of people on the system could be at its infancy. And we'd have to build out for the full project. We could obviously expand it if it's set up correctly, but you don't want to expand it right away. You have to have enough water to feed all the buildings, and you have to be able to get it there, and you have to be able to treat it. So you have to have a good well, and as I said, you have to control the land around that well, so there's no development within so many feet, and then you got to get that water to your storage tank, and all these things are reasonably big ticket numbers.
But that infancy is the same infancy now as it will be in 25 years.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it was 20 years
And it
ago.
was 20 years ago.
Right.
That's right. Only in this report, it said, speaking about septic systems,
Yeah.
not about water, it said the choices that were given here ranged between $1.2 million and $2.2 million, something like that. That was in
2000.
in 2000.
Right.
What is it now?
17, so you
No.
double.
What is it now? And what will it be in
Yeah.
10 years? And
Yeah.
what will it be in 20 years? And which town electorate is going to make the decision to pay for this? And what about the loss of business and therefore the loss of tax base, because the town will shrink instead of grow?
I think that we know all this, and that this is a feasibility study presentation, and that, you know, that was what was on the agenda, was that he was gonna present this, and, you know, I agree, it's a topic, but, I mean, I just don't want the public to feel as though the wells are all contaminated, or that's going to happen. You know, there was some talk about that last week, that, you know, maybe you could test your wells for arsenic and all kinds of other stuff. And being your health officer, I'm not hearing anything like that. I mean, we get some well test requests for the basic stuff.
Total coliform.
And E. coli.
Yeah.
And like when Irene happened, I was asked for 90 test kits. and 2 of them came back with E. coli. I know things were in disarray, but,
Mine came back with E. coli.
well, then you were one of the 2.
Okay.
Well, and on that topic, in this study, they estimated a number of wells in the study area was 99. They tested 59, 11 of them ultimately showed for total coliform. 1 for E. coli and 2 for high nitrates. So even then, this, what you're accurately precise, is this is something that should have been done a long time ago. But even then, we weren't talking about doomsday water supplies. And so we need to take a look at this in its entirety, because it's a very complicated question.
Yeah, I was involved, I used to live in Wardsboro a while ago, and we did a study like that in Wardsboro where we offered to sample everybody's well, and you know, some people took us up on it and some people didn't. And we had also very similar results. There wasn't that many contaminated wells. You know, we thought it was going to be the same thing. It's a little teeny town with little teeny lots and a well and septic on each one of them, and it was a little surprising that the contaminated well population was so small.
What were the contaminants tested for?
I can't remember. It was definitely E. coli, and I think, or total coliform. Total coliform, I think there's thousands of coliform bacteria, and total coliform is just an indicator that the water supply is influenced by surface water.
Was it tested for lead?
I don't believe it was. I'm pretty sure it was just total coliform.
And not nitrates?
No, nitrates is also another indicator to show that it's affected by surface water. If the water supply is good, sealed from the surface influence, then you wouldn't expect to see the nitrates, you wouldn't expect to see the total coliform or field coliform. You would potentially have other problems like radioactive elements and other chemical contaminants, but
Way down.
not necessarily way
Not
down.
necessarily?
No. I'm the Wardsboro Elementary School's water system operator, and we had to check for uranium and radium, I think, because one school in the state got hit, and they tagged it, and every school in the state had to be test for it.
Like Jamaica, I know was.
Yeah.
One of my concerns, though, is right now, some of it's more on the economy of the village, because we had many years ago a lovely restaurant out of the Jamaica House.
Oh, yeah.
And that has been a problem, and one of the reasons why I think it closed was that it was having water problems, sharing with other areas, and it wasn't allowed. That's why it was shut
Sharing
down.
septic.
It was sharing septic.
And the Astis.
Yes.
Across the street with the
Yeah.
pizza place,
Yes.
which isn't a pizza place anymore, and the post office, wasn't it? The
Right.
post office
No,
also
the
there?
coffee shop.
The coffee shop.
So
Oh,
that-
right.
that's part of, I think, what is driving this around the economy of the town, if we are ever going to grow.
I
That,
think,
that restaurant had the best appetizer. Judo and artichoke.
we have now got the rest of the food. I think Andy's point is well taken. We're here just to talk about the potential for finding out the questions we're not discussing. So this clearly has to be rediscussed later on. I thank you very much for this.
And I brought, this was just a sort of a letter contract that says it's $10,000, and I'll give you that
Okay.
also.
I'll put together.
Give you 2 copies of that.
Then we can sometime take a look at all the factors we have to. And then these conversations are gonna be far more germane. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, all you ladies. Bye. Happy marriage. Happy wedding, anyways. Get the marriage later. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Have a nice evening.
I had,
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I had some hope to be able to discuss this tonight. I think we'll put this off later. I want everybody, I think I sent it out to everybody, the water quality and septic study. It is sometimes painful to read, I'll grant you that, but I think it carries a lot of really good information for us all.
One of the things that I actually copied off, which I thought was a really neat page, which is the potential solutions. And it really outlines, and it is all septic
Right.
in answers, so.
There's a lot of information in that. I would
But I'm not
say,
sure that it is meeting the standards and the issues of today.
there's a question we're gonna have to take a look
That's a
at.
major piece.
Yeah. We have one more, I think you told me you have one more engineer group that's gonna talk this, and that'll be in October, so we'll move into that one, and then
Will
we'll
that
make
be,
it.
you know?
You told me.
Otter Creek.
Otter Creek.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Yeah. And that'll give us,
23rd or something like
I
that?
think it's the 23rd.
Next meeting.
23rd, yeah.
Yeah, we don't meet next time.
Yeah, well, we haven't decided that yet, but we will shortly. Let's
I
see.
can do these really fast. I just wanted to impart.
Okay, Joel's up next, he's got to talk really quick about his meeting. I think they're going to, yeah. 2 meetings.
Okay. Housing Revenue Bond Initiative was a meeting in Bellows Falls, and I just found it on my way to St. Johnsbury. So the highlights of that meeting is there's a total of $35 million in state funding to develop and improve ownership and rental housing for very low to middle income households. The goal is for total to be expended by 2020. Application for the program fund starts in the fall of 17. Eligible projects are construction and rehabilitation of multifamily, rental, and single-family housing with an emphasis on creating new homes and bringing substandard properties back into use. Hoped for outcomes: create and improve 550 to 650 units of housing by 2020. Project funds are for municipalities and nonprofits only. Private applicants who are interested must team up with a nonprofit, most common scenario, or a municipality. Average amount of funding per unit would be around $55,000. I have copies of, which I distributed to the board, of the Housing Revenue Bond Initiative.
Is this a matching grant?
No,
It's 100%?
well, there's a lot of different aspects to it, and they anticipate that this will generate volunteer contributions of $100 million. So that the $35 million is a state fund, but they anticipate, and I don't understand all of it, but it would possibly elicit contributions to $100 million. People, in other words, who want to develop the properties themselves. Okay.
So it would be a private, public kind
Yeah,
of.
right, okay, so that's that one.
Okay, this goes, do you have a copy of this?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
Thank you, I do now.
I have a copy.
You have a copy.
The other meeting I went to was when governments cooperate. That was in St. Johnsbury, and actually that was a satellite meeting. The main meeting was 3 days in Montpelier, but I couldn't do that. The focus was on environmental issues, especially Act 250 and agricultural development. The conversation with Peter Kopsko and Reg Smith, Regional Permit Specialist and Enforcement Officer. They stressed above all that they are very willing to answer any questions about any aspect of the Act 250 permitting process. Private citizens and local officials should feel free to call and discuss any questions they may have about what needs to be permitted and how to go about the process. They are happy to help make the process easier and not too much of a burden. Another speaker was Stephanie Smith from VT Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets about the way municipalities can help foster rural economic growth. Some of these include flexible regulations for farm-based enterprises, not very big in Jamaica, inviting lots of community input during any planning process, and being aware of new rural enterprises such as agritourism and being proactive about ways to foster such growth. Part of the program focused on MRGP, which is Municipal Road General Permit process, and the EPM, which is the Emergency Protective Measures reporting. Jamaica has already been proactive regarding the MRGP process, and this presentation greatly increased my understanding of it. The inventory of vulnerable roads, which is part of the program, will be a valuable asset for town and for the board. And finally, the last part of the program was about the history of Act 250 and the beginning of the 3-year process of updating it, culminating on the 50th anniversary in 2020. Many of the attendees were concerned about finding better ways of communicating the purpose and goals of the Act to the general public, possibly even including it in public school curriculum. Many people in the group felt the general public only focuses on the punitive aspects of the Act and not enough focuses on the broad goals and why it's important. And I have a whole bunch of stuff that wasn't touched on at the meeting, which I will leave to Pam and have it available for anybody who wants to see it. And also an updated pamphlet for Act 250 permits.
Oh, I like those pamphlets. Those
Yeah,
are good
this
ones.
goes hand in hand with the meeting I went to the other day.
Yes.
Right.
Fire
Excellent.
permit.
Good.
And that's it.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing the legwork. Real quick, the next item I'd like to inject is Veda. She's been very patient.
Thank you very much. So I want to give you 2 things tonight. This is our draft town plan. It's the same one that I emailed you earlier today. That was a card packet. Also, Pam has a copy. And the other thing is municipal service agreement with Wyndham Regional. We have used up all of our grant money, and we would like to continue to use the services that we've, been benefiting from John Bennett to finish out the process. And he wrote up an agreement just to formalize it. And as far as I understand, we do have the money in our budget. So we did have a vote on it at our last planning commission meeting, and we agreed that we would like to continue to do that.
So I think what we'll do then is we'll copy these things, circulate it to the select board members.
Yep.
And then, are you planning on being here the 23rd or not? I can't remember.
I can, yeah.
How quickly do you need this? I know you need us to adopt this.
Yeah,
Plan.
is that online?
Yes. Well,
Is it possible you're going to make, I would like to have
I can-
paper copy rather than online.
I can print you a copy.
Great, that would be great. I'd appreciate that, because I take it with me where I am and.
I have a paper copy if you want to just do that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and I have.
That'll, or however you want to do it.
Yeah.
Works for me.
Either way.
And then we'll put this with it, and we'll have a chance to review this. And then you would like us to adopt this town plan before, tell me again the time frame you had to work with.
Yes, the next steps here, and I can give you a copy of this worksheet that it's the plan adoption tool.
Okay.
So we're at the part where today at 5 o'clock, just 3 hours ago, the planning commission held their hearing on the town plan, where we opened to the public to accept any comments or questions. And now we're giving it to you, and the select board also needs to have a hearing.
Yeah.
You need to warn it 15 days prior to your hearing. I'm hoping that if it works out for you, you can have your hearing at your November 13th meeting.
Okay.
So that means you have to warn it 15 days before. And it says that you need to have this hearing not less than 30 days nor more than 120 days after a proposed plan or amendment is submitted to the legislative body. So I'm submitting it to you today.
Okay.
So now the clock starts from today, so 30 days
25 o'clock.
from now.
We can have that hearing at a regular select board meeting?
I should think so.
I think it
Probably
Is that what
has
you were
to go
saying?
before or after.
I believe you can have it.
At a
Public,
meeting as such?
public can,
Or maybe an hour before.
Yeah, I was thinking before, yeah.
Whatever you'd like to do. And after you have the hearing, you can vote to adopt it on that same day. You can close the hearing and then open your meeting and vote if you choose to do it that way. And if we do it in that timeline, we will get it in before our old plan expires, which is ideal. But if it doesn't happen and there are changes that need to be made, it's not the end of the world if there's a lapse.
Right.
So, yes, you went through this already, so.
Has there been lapses in the
Yes.
past? Okay.
Yeah, where, for example, when you have a hearing, somebody may come up and say,
All right.
I don't know, yeah. And
Okay.
then you look at that again and decide it's passed, but it, you know, you don't have to have exactly the day that it expires. I mean, you can.
All right, nice experience.
Yeah. You know, we're shooting for that, but
Yeah.
if there's something that comes up, then
Right.
then we'll deal with it.
Okay.
You know.
So did you say at least 30 days after today?
Yes.
And then no less than
120 days.
120, okay.
And the 23rd is 28 days from now.
Actually, Pam, maybe I'll give you this little. Do you want that?
Yeah, sure, I'm gonna take a copy.
Yeah. So this happened today, and now here we are. That we give it to you. That's kind of in your hands at this point.
Awesome.
And we can still make changes. You can still make edits to the town plan up until the time when it gets adopted, I believe.
Okay, thank you. Once again, you've done a superb job with this.
Exciting.
Yeah. It's almost over.
It's a lot of work,
You've
isn't it?
done a huge amount of work. She's done a superb job.
It's like having a baby.
Oh, I did not. I wouldn't know. I've watched you for years afterwards. I know when you're done after.
My babies are
It
50.
feels like it.
My babies are 50, and it's like, it's,
How hard it is.
they're on their own.
No.
Okay, so,
Yes.
you will keep us with a time frame, right? Thank you, ma'am.
No.
All right, the last item we have actually two quick ones. One is,
I have one too, I just wanted to throw in for the camera.
okay, hold on.
I
Let's get stuff that I got down here first. We have a request from, oh, dear, where is it? Joking paperwork. We have a request, I have a letter, a request regarding the, a townwide pumpkin project.
Oh,
Hang on a second, it's here, trust me. And the letter I have says, Chris Clark, Heather Bartels, and Lexi Clark would like to do a pumpkin carving event for the children of Jamaica. Notices will be posted and also in the school's Jamaica newsletter. The fire department is letting us use the department to carve the pumpkins. There will be adult supervision helping the children. The children will not be using any sharp objects for carving. I think she meant alone. The children will have the opportunity to draw their designs on the pumpkins, and they'll get help decorating. We are asking the town to see if they will fund some of the money for this event. Monies to come from the beautification fund. Total amount requested is $125. The cost of the pumpkins is $175 for about 40 to 45 pumpkins wholesale. And Lex is going to donate $50, and the cost of the little lights are going to be little lights as opposed to candles. They'll go to the pumpkins. And then on Halloween night, the pumpkins will be displayed in the village
Oh,
for everyone to
like
enjoy.
the keen.
Sort of, hopefully we won't have the riots at the
Right.
elementary school that they had.
Just one time.
Yeah, just once was enough apparently.
No, they have back.
Do they have it back this year?
This year, I think.
Good.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's the issue. And so there becomes a funding issue we need to act on. She's asking for $125. She's gonna donate 50, so the total price is 175 plus the little lights that they're gonna cover. So do I have a motion to accept this idea?
I think it's a great idea.
That sounds like a motion?
I'll move that we accept and help out with the finances of how much?
100, she's asking us for 125 out of the beautification.
125 out of beautification.
And she's coughing up 50 of her own money.
Yeah,
I'll
that's,
second that.
The coughing up 50 of her own money?
Yes,
Yes.
for sure.
Okay, keep that. Any further discussion? I have a first and a second. I'd just like to say that anytime somebody in the community takes initiative to do stuff like this, I think you gotta support it.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, they're willing to get out there and spend their time. So therefore, let's say any further discussion? All in favor?
Are the lights reusable?
I don't know. I guess it depends on how long they last.
Because I don't know whether the pumpkins going back to the
There's some-
covers, with the little battery things.
Yes,
And are they LEDs or are they incandescents?
Oh dear. Let's let them make that decision. I have every faith that they'll make the right decision. All in favor for this motion, say aye. Any opposed? None, hearing none. That passes. We will be writing her a check for $125.
Good.
The next item of business is number 13. We have a holiday coming up on the 9th of October. Historically, we don't meet on that night. And so I just need a motion from the board to cancel the October 9th meeting. And
moved. Was there more than a motion on it?
That's enough. Any further, wait, do I have a second? Do we have a further discussion? Can I finish my statement? Nah, that's all right. That's all right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, aye, aye. Any opposed? So that's done. Okay, passed. Alrighty. So our next meeting then will be October the 23rd.
Can't wait that long.
The other, let's see. We have a letter from a citizen, David Lamson, who wrote us the following, and I'm reading his handwriting, so forgive me if I'm a tad off. This is September the 12th of 17. Dear, I think that word is people. I would consider donating this property to the town of Jamaica at appraised value of $82,500 and assess that I could because of a tax deduction, parenthesis charitable. This might help keep Vermont rural. Let me know if the town has an interest in accepting that property. I've got a little map for it. It's on Route 30. It's just this side of Adam Sickles' property.
Whose property?
The property belongs to David Lamson.
Yeah, and where is it?
It's on, if you're going out of Jamaica and you're heading towards
Townsend?
Rossonville.
Rossonville,
New York.
that way. Although sometimes we're surrounded by, anyways, Adam Sickles. He's the guy that does guitars. He's got a little guitar sign.
Oh, yes, yes.
So it's probably just this side of that.
Okay.
Yep. So the question, there's two questions here. Question one, does the town want to take on the property? And question number two is there a charitable deduction for donating property to a town? So the question is this something the select board is interested in pursuing or not?
Who's paying taxes on this right now?
Gentleman named David Lamson.
And now we would be paying the taxes.
In theory, we would then pick up the tax burden for this property.
I think this is a question for our lawyer.
Really?
I think this is just costing us a lot of money,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true, because we won't get this tax money.
plus the money to the lawyer.
Yeah,
This seems less, if we wanted to do it, we'd have to go to the lawyer.
yeah.
So let's assume for the sake of argument that we get to first decide whether we want to do it or not.
This is not saleable? Why can't he sell it?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know.
It's a lot of hill. From
It's-
what I've heard,
okay.
it's just a really steep piece of land.
But
I know what the taxes on it are.
No, I couldn't tell you, but if he's saying that it's assessed at what?
82.5.
82.5, then they're higher than they should be. Which is probably why he wants to get rid of it, because he's paying taxes on land that he can't even use.
Yeah.
We don't have.
Well, maybe we should ask solicitors or find out some more information before we make
Before we
a
make a decision.
decision on it.
Yeah, that sounds
I
like.
think the guy's nice enough to ask, we should.
Yeah,
All right, so I will refer this to the listers for details.
yeah, good idea.
I can do that.
Really doesn't tell us much about it.
We don't know very much. I've got the map, but I have not walked it myself. This just happened again. We just got the 12th. All right, so we will refer to listers for review and suggestions. Alrighty then. Now, the other item I have added is a letter from Karen Cause, who was up until the 12th of September our Jamaica librarian. And the letter says basically that she is resigning. The board of the library will be, and I think already has, started looking for a replacement. And just want to let everybody know that that is in process. All right, now, time for public concerns. I have a public. The bomb squad.
I do have something, but I'm not
Oh.
public.
What are you doing? They don't have-
Come over here, so you just.
You are, all right.
Sit over there. Okay,
Go ahead.
basically what I want to talk to quickly about composting. Summer is a good time for composting at home, and a lot of people are doing that. And as you know, we've had this flyer, you don't put your meat and fish products in and things like that, eggs, whatever. So I want to really talk about the composting bins up at the transfer station. We have been doing pretty well, except one of the things that I think people need to know is that when we compost up there in that small bin, we have enough of them, that you can actually put paper goods in there. And I'm just going to read the list because it's important. Used tissues and paper towels, milk and juice cartons, soiled or waxed cardboard, damp or wet paper, soiled or waxed paper, cardboard egg cartons. Now, I do know that we have, someone saves them to give to people who have their own chickens. So if you don't want to do that, you can throw it into the little recycling tote that's up there. Sugar or flour bags without the plastic liners. Now, the reason why I'm pushing that is, first of all, you can't put this stuff in your own, it won't work that well if you have a compost at home. It is important to get these pieces that I just listed out of the trash because we are paying a lot of money to have that trash taken away, and we pay for it being dumped and everything else. We do not pay for the dumping of the paper goods. So it is important that we start to reduce the amount of materials that is going into the compactor. Remember that, it's the compactor that all of these different paper goods can go in. They don't know, it doesn't go in the compactor, it goes into the totes that are up there.
Is this not legal to put in the compactor anymore?
Well, that's the way it's going to be in 2020. So, but it's actually going to save the town money in our taxes, because what that means is that the compactor will be taking less materials and then it can sit there a lot longer before it's taken away. And every time the compactor goes with another thing, it costs the town $200. So please consider.
What was that?
Costs the town $200 to take the compactor and another one of our either recycled bins or whatever. So it really helps our taxes if people will start putting these paper goods that I was reading off and all of that into those totes that are up next to the compactor.
Is that going to be posted at the?
Yeah, it's,
And less plastic bags too, the green bags.
yes, unless, you're absolutely right, thank you for bringing that up. It costs less because you're not using your green or yellow bags for these materials. So it's cheaper on your pocket,
Okay,
okay?
good points.
What,
Right, thank you.
Yes.
maybe Pam could, like a mailer, do you have to pay, how much is a mailer like to go out to residents? Is it a stamp or do you get a break on it or?
You can get a license though. I don't know if
If
the
you
town
could mail
has a
that out to
license.
everyone, that might
Yeah,
I don't think it's that expensive.
to send it out as a mailer. Yeah,
Yes,
'cause we can print these up.
Can ask
Send it
Sherry or
out.
something, and see what she thinks, but
Okay.
I'm sure it would help because
Yeah,
there's quite a
because
bit of information on there.
It has, it's really loaded with stuff. And actually, you can even, what makes the home different than what's at the transfer station is you can actually put meat products
Right.
in the transfer station, and you can't really do that at your home. So there's a lot more that can be going in.
And just one other thing I want to ask you on camera. When we purchase the bags, we don't sell them at a profit.
No, I don't
No,
know.
No,
Mm-mm.
no problem.
I told you.
We are a nonprofit agency.
No, there's no, I remember we offered to
We
Like
pay,
give people a break that wanted to distribute them.
we pay $2 a day.
Yeah, we pay
Yeah,
$2
we
for the green and,
Yeah.
Town pays $2
yes,
for
but
the
that
day.
helps to pay for, the whole, transfer station bill.
Right, so we don't pay $2 a day. We use the
No.
money we get from the
Yeah,
bags to
the-
support the transfer station.
Yeah, right.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Okay, if I go now to public concern, do we have a public that has a concern? No? We have public and no concerns. What an efficient system. Therefore, anything I left off? Anybody I've forgotten?
Where's Lexa? She usually moves to adjourn.
Yeah, I know, we just have to wait for Lex.
She's fast on the trigger.
I'll move we adjourn.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Do I have any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
At 8:28, we are adjourned.
Good job.